This is going to be a fun webinar series for us. I'm going to introduce Kyle here in a minute, but this is a topic that I feel like is so important and so basic, but something that we overlook often. And what a great way to kick off this series, which we're calling Maximize. It's going to be, so far, it's a 5-part webinar series. We're really going to dive into focusing on how to maximize your business potential by trying to master individual pieces of it. So try to break it out into things that people have a lot of concerns about. Kyle, you can probably validate that a lot of the things that you see in these webinars are things that come up all the time in your consulting efforts. And I feel like these topics are really important. And the one that I wanted to kick it off with, so I appreciate you wanting to step in on our
there's some smart people on that upcoming list. I'm feeling a little.
Oh no, trust me. I'll get to your introduction here in a minute. But yeah,
Right.
so for everyone joining, this is our first of several. It's really a commitment on my part and RENDR to really build value in this in this industry. We want to kind of kick back and help other people find success in various ways. So first one here is Maximize, focusing on like business and financial, like business 101. And the reason why I invited Kyle is because Kyle and I have been introduced a handful of times over time here. But Kyle, no better introduction than doing one yourself. Do you want to just introduce, for those who don't know you, who you are, what you do, and why you're on the call?
Yes. My name's Kyle Hunt. Own a business called Remodelers on the Rise. Have a little podcast that's attached to that. Have a little Facebook group. If you go to remodelerscommunity.com, it's a great Facebook group. And I was pardon.
The best Facebook group for construction professionals, hands down.
AJ may have said yesterday, you have one of the best. And I said, what did you just say? I'm sorry, the best. I think that's true. It's great group. So if you're not part of remodelerscommunity.com, go there and subscribe to it. I have been a little bit of reflecting on my years in business lately. My daughter just turned 16, and we started the business when my wife was still pregnant with her. And then my son this week, he's our oldest son. We have 4 kids. We're going through high school graduation. His last day of school was yesterday. So I've been doing this business coaching thing for 16 years. Time flies when you're having fun. A lot of my coaching is around 4 areas. The one we're hitting today of financials, sales process, marketing, and leadership. Love what I do. Do a lot of one-on-one coaching, do a lot of peer group related stuff, group-based coaching. Yeah. And oldest son just graduated. Yes, he has passed everything, flying colors. He got some awards last night. Officially graduated on June the 2nd.
That is awesome. And what a
and I wonder if anybody's going to put in the chat box, congratulations, Thomas, my son. I don't know. Maybe they will.
Maybe. I imagine they will. We got a good group here. So I imagine, someone had just mentioned that I was a little difficult to hear. Kyle, you had mentioned that too. Has it gotten any better? Is it better
for
now
you?
That I have the AirPods
You're doing great. I'm hearing nicely.
Okay, great.
Hopefully everybody hears me good too.
I just popped in the AirPods. So if you have trouble hearing me, let me know. I can speak louder. But I was going to say, what a nice, well-rounded approach you take to consulting. I think that's what I admire a lot about you. And I think me and you have a lot of the same, kind of cut from the same cloth with the approach that we have with other businesses that kind of around us. We really do want to help and kind of step in. I mentioned to you that some consultants in the space that are in for a quick buck and think that they have everything figured out. And it's more about, hey, let's figure this out together. Let's put our 2 heads together and work through some of the issues that you're seeing. Because honestly, every time I do that with another individual, I'm learning something a little bit more about my own business too.
And one thing that I love about the remodeling industry, and this is for everybody to hear, there is not one right way of doing this. Success in the remodeling industry can come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Some people want to be involved in their business. And they want to continue to be involved in the business. Some people find a sweet spot and they kind of hang out there for a while. Some people want to build a business where they are totally out of the day-to-day running of the business. Some people want to really niche down and focus on a specific type of project. Other people like to have a little bit of broad. Some people like to have in-house employees. Some people like to trade partner out everything. There's so many different ways to be successful in our business. And that's kind of what keeps it really enjoyable for me after all these years.
if you were part of the webinar with Eric Fortenberry, the last one that we did on, just business development, like organizational development, we spoke about that. Like, pick your goal. What do you want your business to look like? What do you want out of your life, and set that as your goal post.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah,
We'll talk about that a little bit
I
today,
do want to test on the chat box, because I tried to get some love for my son in there, but I'm not seeing any chats pop up, which maybe it's not active. I don't know.
You got one. Tony
Okay.
just said congrats. I don't know
Oh,
if you
good.
see that
Thank
come
you.
through.
So maybe it's maybe it's in the Q&A section. There we go. What's up,
It
Tony?
is in the Q&A, yeah. So for those who don't know me,
hang on, apologize, Tony.
Yeah.
Congratulations on being a new grandpa as well.
Yeah,
big things going on at the Bonnets.
Yeah. So it's a little bit about me, for those of you don't know, because I do want to get to the meat of kind of what we want to talk about. I'll make this brief. I founded Cornerstone Remodeling. I kind of grew up in the remodeling industry from when I was real young. Started my own company in 2011. It was my desire to just build this company up and operate that. But I always say God has a different path than what we sometimes anticipate. So we scaled this business up to about $8 million in revenue, and really the one thing that I can basically count on is like a nice little crown of achievement is that I've been able to whittle my hours down. I have a phenomenal staff. One or two of them are actually on this call. A phenomenal staff that I can trust. I'm in the business maybe 2 or 3 hours a week, right? I'm not using that time to just twiddle my thumbs and swim in my pool all day. I'm actively building another company. So I was able to launch RENDR in 2022. It's a software for the home improvement industry. We are a different software than if you think of Canvas. If you use Canvas, we're similar. We just offer a different type of product, one that gets you like designs instantly and things like that. But I'm a thought leader. I've been considered a thought leader in the idea of remote engagement in the home improvement space. We're not going to get into that today, but I have some really interesting thoughts on how we can improve our sales process as remodelers to sell faster and decrease that sales cycle in our industry, which is hard fought over, and it's very difficult to squeeze the juice out of the lemon as much as we have. But we've seen our sales cycle at Cornerstone go from 11 to 12 weeks down to 5.5, 6 weeks from some process changes and leveraging RENDR. So really
pause right there. I know you're introducing yourself, and I'm the guest. So Kyle, stop trying to take over. But two things. One, you forgot one of the E's in RENDR, just so you know. Shouldn't yeah. And
you made me pause for a second.
I know.
I'm like, wait, did I misspell my own company?
Well, you're missing an E. And then number two, what you just mentioned there was your sales cycle. That's cycle time. Everybody needs to be paying closer attention to their cycle time. There's a lot of different ways to measure it. What you just mentioned of like from the time maybe I do the in-house appointment or sign a design development agreement to the time we're delivering the first design, or to the time we're delivering a full detailed proposal, or even from the time we sign the design development agreement to the time the contract is signed. What gets measured gets improved. And the more we pay attention to that, all of a sudden that cycle time gets down. And also time kills deals. So the longer the cycle time takes, the less energy is around the project. And frankly, your closing rate goes down. So you had mentioned that in passing. I think there's some learning tidbits right there to just kind of highlight.
Big time. 60% of all contracts awarded to contractors end up going to the ones that got the estimate to the client the fastest. That is a huge statistic, backed up by data. It's unreal. So what we did as a design build, it's very difficult for design builds to get proposals out the door faster. There's a lot. I mean, I don't think there's anybody on this call that would disagree with the fact that there's a lot of work, whether you're charging for it or not. You should be charging for it. We'll get to that. But if you're charging for it or not, there's a lot of work that happens to get that proposal out the door. And I think the average, I pulled a statistic for the last time I spoke at FAST. It was average time to get an estimate out the door from a general contractor with no design work is 11 days. From the time the consultation happened to the time that the homeowner receives an estimate, it's 11 days. For a design build, that average goes to 24 days. We have ours down to 7 days or less at Cornerstone. 7 days from the time that we speak to the client and that design agreement is signed to the time that we're delivering that first pass proposal. It makes all of the difference to keep them engaged, keep them excited. Again, like you said, it helps the conversion, the rate go up from actually closing that deal. There's a lot of positive things about shortening that sales cycle. So let's just get into it. So I'm gonna hover on this slide. This is just a framework of
and
things
AJ, if you want to, if there's anything
today.
you do to play with your audio a little bit, we're kind of like AJ's audio is about half of Kyle's, is what we're getting. So I've got you turned. I've got you turned up pretty high on my end.
I mean, you have a pretty nice headset, and I'm working on the AirPods right now.
The one thing you might test is under the audio there. If you hit that up arrow, maybe try a different microphone, and just see if going through your computer might. You could keep your speaker part, but maybe the microphone.
How now? Is that a little better?
It is. I think it's a little louder. A little less crisp in the audio, but I think it's louder. We'll let the people decide if they prefer this.
Okay. Here we are testing Zoom out right before this call, and everything seemed to be working fine. And now all of a sudden, audio issues, right? Figures.
Technology.
All right. So I'm going to leave this slide up, the framework for our conversation. And the reason why we built it this way, we kind of touched on this yesterday, Kyle, is that there are things that a lot of businesses have asked me and have asked you about, hey, I need to figure this one thing out that I know is a problem. And what we see often is that actually the problem? Hey, thank you for the thumbs up on my audio. Is that actually the problem, or is it something else? And when you ask the question like, well, okay, so you're saying that this is going wrong. Does it mean that this is also, you're seeing this? And the answer is usually, I'm not sure, right? So there are some foundational knowledge that I think as business owners, we really need to get right before we can start doing some of the things that we really want to do to help us build a business that gives us maybe some of that operational freedom, can help us grow, can help us find more time at home, whatever it may be. All of it builds on this idea of just knowing our finances, our business, just basic business knowledge a little better. So Kyle, when we spoke about this yesterday, I kind of asked you, like, is there something, because we only have an hour. This is a 12-week session, right? We only have an hour. So are there basic 3 or 5 or 7 things that you could basically lay out to say, in 60 minutes here, if you're going to walk away with something, get these things right, or at least focus some energy on making sure that you have these things right?
Yeah. So kind of getting in that black box at the top there of understanding your business before maybe we get even more granular as we go through the hour. That business 101, just the know, everybody knows that phrase. You got to know your numbers. You got to know your numbers. I say it, that coach says it, that coach, that group says it, everybody says it. I also know, fun fact, AJ knows his numbers because there is 0% chance that you build out a successful, profitable business and the owner is working a handful of hours each week without knowing your numbers. There's a direct correlation there. So if I were to kind of summarize or kind of whittle it down, I was thinking of a story from earlier, even this week. It was on Tuesday morning. And I think the gentleman may even been on this call. I think I saw his name pop up. So I won't use names to protect. But newer member of one of my peer groups, and we were meeting earlier in the week, and he just asked a question, which is a great question. How's everyone else in the group doing when it comes to knowing their numbers and having all this kind of locked and loaded and rock solid? And he'd been to the in-person retreats and starting to get to know some of the other companies. There's 9 other companies in the group, and I kind of went through them and I said, they're rock solid. They're still working on their job costing system. They've really dug in, like kind of where you are in really digging in right now. They started that 3 years ago and have grown tremendously in their financial knowledge. This person, they're still kind of a work in progress. And I went through them, and he wisely kind of asked a follow-up and said, what are the key differences in your eyes, Kyle, between the remodeler who's a work in progress with their numbers and the ones that are rock solid? It's a great question, right? If I can see what those are, it's kind of the same question you're asking. So at the foundation of kind of financials 101, I like to think of the financials in each of your remodeling businesses as dials. kind of embraced that metaphor, that visual of dials. I did an event a couple of years ago where the shirt said "Dial It In," and it was about these different financial dials. And when you think about it, in each of your remodeling businesses, there are a lot of different financial dials. We could probably list out 15, 20, 25, 30 different dials, things you can adjust up, things you can adjust down, things you can dial in to help you know your numbers and for the numbers to be improved. So out of all of those dials, I'm going to just kind of focus on 3 of them here at the start that I think are really, 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 that's 3, AJ, that's 3 reallys. That means it's really important. 3 dials. One of the most important dials is the gross profit dial. Your gross profit dollars and your gross profit margin. If you are a remodeler and you can speak to me very clearly about your gross profit, I am speaking to a remodeler who understands a huge part of their financials. And when I start asking questions about it and you have answers, okay, we're really understanding our dials. Looking at your gross profit and saying, what has my gross profit been the last several years? Is it trending in a certain direction? Has it been going up? Has it been staying about the same? Has it been going down? How does my gross profit relate to how I'm charging for my work? If I am charging a straight across the board markup of 1.50, my gross profit margin should come out at 33%. Why does this say 27%? What's going on here? If I am looking at it and I'm going, man, my gross profit seems off, are all of your costs of goods sold where they should be? Or are some of them hiding down in overhead expenses where they shouldn't be? Are you considering—
That's a great point.
Yeah. And maybe another kind of thought about this gross profit dial is, are you considering if your gross profit is looking better because you have a bunch of deposits in your top line revenue that you don't have any expenses against? Then we would get into WIP, work in progress, making that adjustment to kind of true up your gross profit. So that is one of those dials that if people really truly understand and can talk about and can answer questions and can be confident in that number, there is a wonderful positive ripple effect in that.
And I wouldn't want to spend a whole lot of time getting granular on that specific topic, but it does come up often enough to at least point out that some of the most common mistakes that builders make, remodelers, home improvement professionals make, is saying that, okay, general consensus is in this industry, it's usually between 30 and 40% gross profit. There are probably some people on this call that are like, I'm pulling 50% gross profit. I would have 2 questions, or I would have at least 2 comments on that. Is like, one, if that is correct, good for you. There's probably some other things I'd follow up on. But
Sure.
2, like I would kind of poke it, say 50% is everything where it needs to be. Because what happens often is that we have remodelers that begin to ask questions and find out from other remodelers, what is the typical gross profit? Someone will say 35, someone will say 40, someone will say 27, whatever it may be, but typically between 30 and 40. And you're looking at a P&L that your financial manager or accountant can give to you, and it says, I'm pulling 44% gross profit. I am doing so much better than all of these other remodeling companies. So when you begin to compare yourself against all these remodeling companies, I think that's what some of the trouble that I've seen people get into. Because if you're pulling 44% gross profit, let's dig into exactly what goes into that number. Because if you have things that are in your cog or that are not in your cogs that should be, well, they're getting accounted for somewhere else. What is your net profit, right? If you're pulling a 44% gross profit, but then you're telling me that your expenses are 34% of your revenue, you're not making any money, right? You're making money, but you're not doing as well as you thought you were. Does it matter if a remodeler has project manager expenses in COGS or overhead?
AJ, I don't think there's a right. AJ, that is an amazing question, and we're going to save it for the Q&A section.
We should. Let me know if you feel like that is should be on one side of the line or other. Project managers, is it COGS or is it overhead?
Yeah. I like to seed the Q&A, because if we get to the Q&A part and there's no questions, then we just sit here and stare, and that's getting pretty granular. and we don't want to get I don't want to get stuck.
Don't get too much in the weeds.
Because I had two other ones I wanted to hit on as far as the
knowing go ahead with the other two.
And by the way, quick answer is the majority of the time I see it in overhead expenses, and some of the time I see it in cost of goods sold, and I'm perfectly okay with both ways. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me how you pay for your project manager? Can you tell me how you're calculating it? Those are the real questions. And also to what you said,
do you know what that what that makeup is overall with your overhead? With your overall revenue? Do you know what that percentage is? I can tell you right now that my project managers are 4% of my revenue.
Yep.
Whether it's above or below the line doesn't really bother me as much as just knowing the number, because depending on where I measure it, I know what to attribute success to. So if I know this is off, it's not because of my project managers, right? Just because I know where that is.
And comparison can sometimes be the thief of joy. So be careful as we're comparing. The other thing is, have zero opinion about somebody giving an answer to that says 44% gross profit or 30% gross profit. Don't have any opinion off the bat. Just go and learn why it is the number it is. Hey, can you tell me more about it? Oh, so you've got a lot of a lot of things that I put in overhead expenses you have in cost of goods sold. Oh, wow, your overhead expenses are only 13% of your overall revenue. I can see how you're at a 28% gross profit margin. You're still at a 12% net profit. Interesting. Oh, wait, you're at a 20% net profit? That's amazing. Oh, you don't have any kind of owner salary and overhead expenses? Well, that changes the whole way I feel about this. So comparison is good, but you have to actually study and dig in to really be able to compare apples to apples.
I always say, as a rule of thumb, comparison is very bad. But if you're looking for advice from other peers, just know that you can get some pretty good advice. But with that advice, you start to look at your own stuff. You got to understand the conversation, the context of what you're getting back, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to hijack this. So that was one. Gross profit, very important, right?
Bam.
What is 2 and 3 here?
And again, I'm kind of thinking like, what is the 20% that leads to the 80%? A little bit of the 80-20 rule in here. So another dial that I love and that I coach on a lot and that I want remodelers to pay a lot of attention to is what I'll just call the job costing dial. The job costing dial. Job costing in its plain essence is for an individual project. What am I expecting my cost and gross profit to be? And what is my actual cost and gross profit? Kyle, some of these people are like, Kyle, I've listened to you a decent amount on your podcast and your teaching. You sure talk about job costing a lot. Yep. I don't do that because
because it's important.
Yeah, I'm not getting paid by the job costing, industry or whatnot. I'm simply because it's crazy important. And what I kind of want to highlight with the job costing is, number one, fighting and working and putting in the efforts to make sure that you have the data you need to really analyze job costing well. How are you doing with that? How are you doing with knowing what your estimated versus actual is when it comes to materials? Well, Kyle, we go to the supply house and I buy materials for 3 projects and we're not breaking that out. That's a problem. My job costing just got hijacked a bit, right? Or, what about expected versus actual on trade partners? That's usually pretty clear. What about expected versus actual with in-house labor? Oh, baby, we've got a lot of work to do there. Is the number you're looking at the actual full employee labor burden cost? Is it just the actual labor cost that doesn't have a lot of labor burden? That's an area that a lot of you might need to kind of clean up a little bit. Can you show me your expected versus actual? And even better, as you dial it in and you dial your systems in, how soon to today are you looking at your job costing? If you can look at your job costing as the end of the project,
that's a money question.
Yeah, and I can analyze it. That's cool. That's nice. But oh, baby, is it so much better when I'm able to see, wow, we estimated 200 hours so far on this project and we're already at 280 and we're not done with that phase. I need to light a fire underneath. I need to do some updating.
Precisely.
I need to So job costing dial is huge. And then just to emphasize that, there's just this positive ripple effect that happens when we get the job costing dial in place. We become better estimators. you see things that you forget. You turn from that optimistic estimating that you do that says, yeah, that's going to take 20 hours. Oh crap, that took 30. When we don't watch our job costing, we do not become better estimators. When we watch it, we become better estimators a lot quicker. It gives you confidence in selling because you know what you need to be selling it at. It improves and positive ripple effect in your project management. You get ticked more than you do now when you see 5 additional trips to the lumberyard because we're not prepared, because we're seeing these hours just elevate and our gross profit
I don't know
go
what you're
down.
talking about. I don't think that's very common.
Well, not
Extra
for
trips
you.
to Home Depot. I don't think anybody
Yes.
deals with that. Oh my
Hypothetically
gosh.
speaking, AJ.
Hypothetically, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we got a question here from Tony. How important is job costing if I'm tracking all projects monthly on my WIP? He says, I haven't made job costing as important only when I see material, subcontract, and labor way out of line. Is this a mistake?
What's your take on that, AJ?
I think the overall goal is to get to a point where, like you just said, is how close to today are you knowing your actual numbers? Because it does give you the ability to pivot quicker to know how you should allocate resources. We've seen this in our own businesses. We'll produce monthly, either monthly reports or before we were doing them, what we called them job autopsies. We still do them. We would print out job costing reports at the end of a job, but ultimately, what you want to do is to have real time data. Monthly is a good stepping stone, right? It's getting you a little closer to that. But if you know how the project is doing today, and you have a operations meeting, a production meeting, and you have 2 available guys, or you have subcontractors that are asking for work that maybe they'll skimp on, their charges for just keeping them busy. You need to know exactly where you can put them. If you can just say, okay, well, this job could use some help, right? I'm going to throw some people over there. But if you knew today that even though this job doesn't really need help next week, but I'm really behind on hours, it would really help this job if I were to expedite this phase. Like we're already over hours or we're getting close to it. Let me
Yep.
juice this one up to try to get it back on track so I buy myself some breathing room down the road. Like that's the power of knowing your answers today. Mark McClanahan from Mosby said this at Fast. He said, when we got to a point where we were proactive with our decisions and not reactive, when we were getting transparent data on a day-to-day, moment-by-moment basis on where a job was, that's when we started to find success. So I would just kind of echo your sentiment with this. Like having monthly reports is not a bad thing. It's better than, I would say, better than 70% of the 80% of the businesses that are out there
Yeah.
really tracking anything anyway.
Yeah. And Tony WIP is, WIP in its essence is taking, here's what my original kind of job costs are. Here's how much I've spent so far. Here's how much we've brought in, and here's kind of spits out the percentage we're done. It's good. It helps. But job costing, I'd encourage you to get a little bit more into the weeds of job costing so that we can see, the WIP report, most likely, unless you're getting real granular with it, is not saying here's how much my actual materials cost is versus my estimated versus actual. Trade partners, boom, boom. Labor, boom, boom. You'll see the overall big picture, 10,000 view trend of it, but I would love
it's
for you
more
to see
about
it a little more
leverage.
granular.
Yeah, and it gives you a little bit more leverage as an owner too.
Yep.
He said that they are tracking, weekly in Builder Trends. So if you have a project management software that can give you that data, that like that peer in, that transparency, we're going to get to transparency here in a second too. Like
Yep.
that is also crucial because the more data that you have to make informed decisions about how your business operates, and then bigger picture than that, like help you make strategic moves as you move forward into either growing or enhancing things. The closer you are to your data,
Yep.
even if you're 3 steps removed, you got to be able to look straight through the floor and be able to see it. So
Love it.
So number 2. So we had number 1, which was you're knowing your gross profit. Number 2 is job costing. So what's number 3 in your mind?
Oh crap, I forgot. What's number 3? Remember there was a few years ago, one of the political candidates was like, I got 3-part plan. And literally they blanked out on number 3. It was kind of funny.
It happens to the best of us.
It happens to the best of us. Usually we can just make up a third point, but I'm not making it up. The third one that when I was kind of whittling it down to, okay, just 3 is the net profit dial. And the reason I say the net profit dial, I'll just say a couple words about it, is if I am paying attention to my net profit, and measuring that and having a goal for that and knowing what that looks like, it means I'm already really dialed in on my overhead expenses. It means that I understand how owner draw works or how owner loans work, because I look at that net profit and go, well, the net profit of my P&L, that looks higher than what I would expect it. Oh, my owner draw comes out of that. Oh, the principal payments on my loans come out of that. So if I have a net profit goal, and frankly, at the end of the day, after paying ourselves hopefully a reasonable salary and some of the benefits in our overhead expense, we want to be sitting on a nice, healthy net profit. It is your reward for all of the blood, sweat, and tears that you are pouring into your business. It's also the thing that helps you continue to invest in your business and grow, or frankly, buy your spouse a lovely gift for their birthday, or feel like you could take a little bit of a trip, or you can increase your retirement savings, or you save for college education, or some of the other financial goals you have. I like to say 3.7% net profit is no fun. It's no fun. So much work for so little. Oh, we're right there. 13.3% net profit. Ooh, that's kind of fun. 10% net profit. Nice. 17% net profit after you've paid all of your expenses and a reasonable owner salary. Ooh, this is really worth the effort.
Especially if that 17% net profit is including a WIP adjustment.
Even better.
Right? Because we can also get in trouble if that 17% net profit is including a lot of deposits we just signed on some pretty big upcoming projects, right?
Bingo.
Another little
so there's your three on the foundational items.
I love it. So if a home improvement pro, a business owner, comes to you and says, I'm not happy with my net profit, which lever do I pull to increase it? Like we said, there's no single answer to that unless we are understanding altogether all of the levers that we have at our disposal and how to actually look at them across a spectrum, across a dashboard, right? You say dials, I usually say levers, but nevertheless, I think what we're trying to say is, like, unless you know all of those basics about your company, the most important factors, you don't really know where to turn when your net profit is suffering and you're doing all this hard backbreaking work and you're not getting anything out of it. Well, we can just raise our prices. Well, what if your prices are already good? What if you're already competitive? Well, how do I know that? Well, my gross profit says that I'm bidding jobs well. Well, are things that you should be including in that and your cost of goods sold where they need to be to let you know whether or not you are bidding jobs properly? And if the answer to all those things are yes, then okay, well, we have another issue. Maybe our expenses are too high. Can we lower those? Well, there's two ways to lower them. You literally lower them. You go through your P&L and say, I don't need this office space, or maybe we'll sell off these 2 trucks, or maybe it's my office is overstaffed, right? You can look at all of those things, or you can say, well, my overhead is a fixed expense. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go up or down relatively. So if I increase my revenue, if I sell more, now my overhead expenses as a result, as a derivative of that overhead, or sorry, of the overall revenue, comes down.
Yes,
right? So instead of me running at 25% overhead, I'm now down to 22%. Well, I just added 3% to my net profit just because I was able to increase revenue. Well, there's multiple ways of doing that. And then you start to measure other things, right? So this kind of springboards perfectly into like KPIs, right? And for those of you who don't know what a KPI is, it's a key performance indicator. It's a metric. It's a flag. It's a little speedometer. Like when you tap on it, say, how fast am I really going? Right? It's a way that you can look at a specific thing in your company that you can measure to let you know if it's going the way it should be going, right? I speak a lot about this. I made my general manager read the most boring book on earth. It was all about KPIs and how to establish good systems around KPIs and OKRs. OKRs and objective and key results. It's kind of like the bigger picture. And forgive me, I nerd out with this stuff all the time. My staff tells me this all the time. Like, you're getting too much into the whole process thing.
You're like, oh, KPIs, OKR. You got a big old grin on your face.
I love it because, being out of the daily action, me as an owner, so I get this all the time. I would love to be in your shoes. I would love to have a company that can operate on its own. So obviously the first thing is I know my business numbers. I know where everything should be, right? And I know what those numbers should look like. So the second step is how can I easily see and track the process, all the progress that we're making to ensure that those numbers are consistently being hit. So we put a lot of flags in the ground, right? We said we need to measure these things and know when we're off. I'm not saying we've done it perfectly either. We had some issues last year or two years ago, in 2022, that we had to kind of like pull the nose of the plane up because we weren't paying attention as closely as we should have been to some specific KPIs. I'll leave this as a comparison for you guys just to kind of understand. When we look at marketing, you probably get this question a lot, Kyle. It's like, how do I know I'm getting my money's worth, right? How much should my marketing budget be? Well, there's no right answer to that. But one thing that we do know is that ROI on marketing dollars is very important. We need to make sure that all the money that we spend, that we invest in marketing, we're getting a healthy return on that investment. So just like we invest in the stock market, we invest, we buy Tesla stock, we're going to see that graph, we're measuring and make sure the graph is going up. And if it's going down, we're like, whoa, what do I do with this stock? Same thing with marketing, right? We need KPIs in place. Typical KPI, I'm not going to wait for a Q&A on this one, but a typical KPI for marketing is leads. If I spend X, I need this many leads out of it. Again, no right or wrong answer. It's going to be different for different companies depending on your market and the type of business that you run. But generally speaking, marketing dollars, leads, there should be a KPI. If I spend X, I need Y. Mm-hmm. Well, if the KPI on your lead starts to dip, what's the natural inclination for business owners? Like, I need to throw more money at marketing. Well, we sensed this in 2022. Our leads started to dip. So I had mentioned to my marketing director at the time, what's wrong here? And he was looking at his KPI was traffic to the website, not leads. Well, mine was leads and not traffic to the website. Trick question, who's right or wrong here? So really, we were both right and both wrong because what we were missing was the connection between the two. We were driving a ton of traffic to the website and our leads were going down. So all of our marketing dollars were generating what they were supposed to be generating, which was traffic to the website, but they weren't generating the leads. So we started to connect the dots and say, well, I don't want to spend more money to get leads to the website. I need to spend the money to get the conversions of that traffic to actually be making appointments. So we focused all of our energy on the conversion percentage between traffic to the website in our area to actual leads that were coming in the door. Now that's another KPI that we're tracking. Is that conversion rate going up, down? Is it steady? Because if it's steady, I know that I'm going to get, when I put in money into marketing, I'm going to get more leads out of it. Right, exactly. So that's the difference between having a really good KPI set up to measure something that you need to keep an eye on. OKRs, like I said, people have different, if you're an EOS, these are your rocks,
so many acronyms.
I know, like EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System. Some of you guys are big EOS fans. You've read the book Traction. You have rocks. You have like milestones, goals. Like, I'm going to lose 10 pounds in the next 3 months. Okay, that's an OKR. What are your KPIs? How do you lose that 10 pounds in 3 months? Well, I'm going to track my calories. I'm going to exercise for 15 minutes a day, right? Those are your KPIs. I'm going to lose 1 pound a week.
Things we can measure.
Exactly. To help you make sure that you're still on course. And if you don't lose that pound in that week, what do you have to do? You have to adjust. You have to pivot. Now I got to lose 2 pounds next week. How am I going to do that? Right. So a lot of those things just give us really good transparency because for someone like me being out of the mix, I'm not running marketing. I'm not looking at how campaigns are doing every day. I'm not figuring out how to change messaging or what content's going out. I have nothing to do with that. What I look at is when I'm at home on a Thursday night, I'm having an old fashioned or a coffee, and I look in and I say, how's marketing going for Cornerstone? I can easily look in and see, because we're tracking all this in Google Sheets. How are we doing? Are we getting leads? Hey, look, things look good. Our KPIs are being hit. Our leads are coming in. Like, this is all good. Or, hey, if there's something wrong, it's a text message. Hey, are we doing something about this? Yeah, and usually the response is, we're already on it. Yep. Guess what? Me as an owner, I can sleep well that night. Hey, my team's on it. And they're a fantastic team, right? So those little gatekeeping mechanisms that you can put in place will help free you up from having to get in the weeds on every single aspect of your company. And you're not doing all of these all at once. You're doing little bits at a time. and building up this really awesome foundation of just accountability and transparency, so that when you can shave off an entire department, gosh, that's freedom for a business owner.
Yeah.
When I was able to put my marketing hat up on the shelf, and then I was able to put my estimating hat on the shelf, and then I was able to take away my general manager responsibilities, oh my gosh, it doesn't mean that I've walked away. I can still look in and see what's going on, but I don't have to get involved with what's going on. And that's a huge difference.
Yeah, no doubt. And then you just put on your render hat and you're working your butt off. You know, so to your
More
point
distracted
of the
than ever, yeah.
of the marketing KPI was interesting. I see my boy Paul McManus as one of the attendees here. He had commented a few weeks ago. I think I was mentioning some KPI related stuff, and he was highlighting what you were just highlighting of going, you know, the KPI or the tracking of kind of our overall revenue we're bringing in. It's helpful, but we're just kind of the root of that. The root of that is I need to be generating X number of leads, qualified leads. That we don't have to define that. We're talking about just raw leads that come through, or are we talking about qualified leads where, you know, maybe you calculate the qualified based on they're in the trade area, they're running a project that is, you know, our service offering, et cetera. X number of qualified leads, because I know from studying my KPIs and studying my numbers and financials that if I have X number of marketing leads, we convert X% overall into design development. And I know that once we get into design development, we convert X amount to there. And that starts to take care of when I look at my average job size. So there's some granular things in there. A lot of you may not be at that advanced step yet, down there in that yellow and green, if you will, when we're looking at that in that slide there. But yes, that is a great example of kind of KPI. That was one of the ones I kind of jotted down, was around kind of the marketing side of things. Can I share one other one that I like to look at?
Please.
You won't like this as far as a tried and true, like proper KPI, because you're doing proper KPIs. But one thing that I love to, yeah, one thing I love to ask all of my clients about, at least, is if you walk in a lot of my clients' offices, you're going to see a revenue thermometer on the wall that has the top line revenue at the top. Some of them have a monthly goal, some of them have a quarterly goal they're at. Some of them it's an annual goal. And it's literally like a revenue thermometer that when you bring in revenue, you scribble and you fill it up, and it's going up throughout the year. I especially like that when I see one of my remodeling clients that, look, your job costing is looking good. Frankly, your gross profit margin is looking good. But what we need to focus on this year is we need to bring more dollars in. If we increase our total revenue and put it through our system, producing that amount of gross profit, we're going to be able to really enhance our net profit at the end of the year. So one KPI, if you will, that I like to look at is if you are aiming to bring in $3 million of revenue in 2024, $3 million of revenue in 2024, dollars in your bank account, not just, hey, I sold a $400,000 project. I'm talking revenue in your bank account. And because I know that that's going to produce a little over $1 million of gross profit. And I know that if I do that, my overhead expenses are covered and I got a really nice little net profit down here. If I've got $3 million of revenue I need to bring in, that means $250,000 a month. And that means $750,000 a quarter. And here we are at the end of May 2024. If I asked each of you and said, all right, based on your revenue goal that you have coming in, how much revenue have you already deposited in and produced, and how much revenue have you like sold, like signed and sealed? So you'd be like, well, like contracts signed, not design and development, contracts signed. If you look at that number, there's a little bit of talk about a flag that could either pull up a little green flag, it put up a yellow flag, it put up a red flag. If on May 23rd of this year, 2024, if you're aiming for $3 million of revenue, and between your produced revenue and dollars that you've sold that will be coming in the coming months, if you tell me $2 million, I'm feeling pretty good about it. It's a little bit of a green flag, maybe a little yellow flag. If you tell me 1.5 million, I'm concerned. That's a KPI that's setting off a little bit of a yellowish red flag of going, all right, we're coming up on the halfway mark. And as far as signed work and produced, I'm kind of at the halfway point of the year, and that's what I've sold. I would much rather that number be $2 million, 2.2 million, 2.4 million. And oh, by the way, over here in a separate conversation, we talk about what our actual design development pipeline looks like. So that's one I like to pay attention to, especially for people that are just kind of stagnant at a certain revenue total and therefore a certain gross profit total. Because what if they need to, I'm thinking of one of my clients in particular, they needed to add $600,000 of revenue. They had their job costing locked in. Their overhead percentage was higher than we wanted it to. We needed more dollars coming in. They needed to increase production out there. So that's a KPI I like to look at, which is a little different than maybe what some people would say, but it's a good pulse check on things.
I think it's very common. We have the same in our sales director's office. We actually have a whiteboard that we track, hey, sales for this month, which ones do we think we're going to go? And we actually do have what looks like a thermometer. We'll draw a different shape. We had a snowman in December, right? We're trying to fill up the snowman.
Oh, creative.
We'll do, I know, we're a creative bunch. So we'll track revenue like that. But pulling back, right? So we just got real granular talk about KPIs and OKRs. It's probably my fault, right? We got real granular talk about this, but pulling back, if we have someone who's asking like the high level question of like, okay, Kyle, I heard what you just said. I am shooting for 3 million, or I'm shooting for 4, or I'm shooting for 1.5 million. I'm coming up on the halfway mark, and I feel like, I'm going to come short on that goal, or at least I'm running behind, right? I think it's very common in this economy, this market right now I think there's a lot of people feeling a little bit of pressure, whether it's sales pressure, people dragging their feet. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that in the industry.
Yep.
Or it's just a backlog that's not as far out as we feel really comfortable with. What's like one thing that you can do for a business owner who says, I'm shooting for $3 million this year. I'm running behind. What can I do about that? What can I do? Mm-hmm. Right? Because that's an honest like cry for help. Like, how do I pick up the slack here? Because I'm already working 50, 60 hours a week. What can I be doing more of? How can I do any better to actually make sure that I'm hitting my mark?
So where I go with that is I say, number one, how's your cash flow feeling? How dire is this? If I'm talking to a remodeler who has a very healthy savings account that has been preparing for a rainy day versus a remodeler who's going, dude, I'm already project to project. Things are tight and I'm not getting yeses. The quality of leads have gone down. My conversion from design development has gone down, and they don't have a lot of dollars in the bank. The urgency for change for that person is going to be different than somebody that has a bit of a rainy day saved up. For the person that it's tight, so we need to understand the context of it, of going, all right, you need to lock in and lock down on your marketing efforts. I don't have a lot to spend on marketing. Okay. Remember those 4 leads you generated earlier this year from strategic partners? Go contact architects, go contact designers, have some Zoom calls, have some potential strategic partner relationships. If they're going, look, things are really, really tight. We look at your overhead expenses. Is there somebody on your team that we need to have a hard conversation and a hard decision around, and we need to let that person go? So it depends on the dire aspect of it. Usually what it comes back to is lock in on your sales process. You have 4 people that you owe updated designs to or updated estimates to. Call one of them, book a time that you're going to present that even though you don't have it, and give yourself a self-imposed deadline. Eat your frogs. The thing you're putting off that you need to get done, you need to reduce your cycle time. You need to get in front of your estimates and designs. That's usually literally the first place I go. The second place is, what about the marketing side? How are we going to start generating more leads? So that's a marketing and sales focus and question. And again, the first place to go is what? Show me your active pipeline. Well, we got so much in pipeline. I'm behind on this and behind on that. That's your focus. That is precisely requiring 90% of your next attention. Book the next appointment. Figure out if you need to bring in an outside designer to help you work through this. What is the next right thing related to each of these projects? That is your most likely aspect that's going to lead to paying projects, money in the bank, backlog being built up. So there's a few thoughts for you.
That is some really helpful advice. Yeah, I'll be transparent. Cornerstone is a big fish. It's doing really well, but it is tight on cash flow. So that's exactly what we dialed in on. We are hyper focused on sales cycle. Can we massage this pipeline any better than how we're doing it? Can we stay in front of these folks? Yep. We're changing some things up to make sure that we're presenting things that are better than our competitors and faster than our competitors. getting that sales cycle down, because I know that if I have this pipeline, my pipeline is robust. I'm working with a lot of leads. I've got this little bottleneck in my sales process, right? Where a lot of people are in the pipeline, but they're not getting pushed through into production.
Yes.
We need that to be our number one priority. So I'm working with that on my with my team, and I think if they're still on the call here, I think it'd be very validating for them to hear that from someone like you that says that's really the one thing that you should be focused on.
Yep.
Because when you are tight on cash flow, it's easy to run out of reserves when you're an $8 million company. You can burn through cash a little faster. Actually getting in front of it and solving the right problem, and not just saying, well, I'm going to throw another $30,000 into marketing over the next quarter. It's like, no, whoa. No, you got plenty of leads. What are you doing with them?
Yeah.
You're losing
so
people because you're
when
not
we talked about the dials
earlier,
sometimes we're making big adjustments to dials. In your guys' case, the adjustment you're making to
tweak.
You're tweaking. There's other people where their bottleneck, they need some major change there. I see the bottleneck of whether it's estimating or whether it's design, where projects that should be getting cranked through over a 2-week standpoint turns into 4 weeks or 6 weeks because you don't have enough capacity. You are trying to do too much design and development work with limited resources. It'd be the equivalent of you saying, man, why are my jobs in the field not getting done? I've got 100 labor hours of this carpentry work. Oh crap, I'm expecting to get done 200 hours of carpentry work, but I only have 100. We see that clearly when it's in the field. We need to see that clearly when it's on the design development side. Are you seeing that you are way over capacity on your ability to handle that design development? And as such, things are lingering out. There's adjustments that we can make. For example, stop starting up designs so frequently. Let the prospect know, hey, we start up 4 design projects every 2 weeks. We're at capacity there so that we can work people through. We can start your design development on June the 6th. And I'm going to give you some homework and some work to do in the meantime. Like adjust your capacity, find an outside designer, find some outside help, take your project manager, say, hey, I know you're a little lighter on the project manager side. Can you help with this? So those are adjustments to the dials.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of, we only have a few minutes left to kind of wrap the conversation up. There's a lot here. I mean, that was some great advice. Obviously, like we're trying to weave this whole conversation around just the fact that all of these decisions that we need to make when our business is either in trouble or it's doing really well, but is it really doing really well? Or, hey, we want to make some strategic moves. We want to grow. We want to open up another location. I want to hire more people, right? Or maybe we've identified some bottlenecks in our organization, and we say we want to hire someone to augment my design team or so on. Being able to identify exactly where you need the most help, these KPIs and so on, we talk about them being in the numbers primarily during this call, but really those KPIs are also bandwidth for your employees. Like, what are they expected to be able to produce per employee, or like office versus field? When you start to understand those as well, you can start to identify, where is your bottleneck? We thought that we needed another designer at one time, but we then started to do the math and say, well, the designers are doing all these things that, honestly, if we took this off of this designer's plate and this off of this designer's plate, we combined the two into a full-time job, and that freed the designers up to do what they do best, when we hired somebody as a project coordinator to do what those designers don't need to be doing best, right? Placing orders, tracking deliveries, handling warranties.
Thoughtful, strategic decisions.
You need breathing room to be able to think outside the box on some of these things. And I see time and time again that us as business owners, a lot of times we're living underwater, we're just trying to make the next best decision, and we're making decisions very rapidly, reacting to situations that are right in front of us. But if we can afford ourselves the ability to kind of put some things in place, knowing our numbers, establishing some KPIs, some transparency within the organization, it does begin to push our heads up above water a little more, so that we can survey the landscape a little easier, right?
Yes.
Identify things before they're problems and getting ahead of them, so that we can, make good decisions, or at least feel more confident with the decisions that we're making.
Know that things, yes.
Exactly. We're reacting less and we're being proactive more.
What do you think of asking the people to type in a couple questions in here to help us?
I'm surprised strong. We haven't gotten many questions.
Well, we haven't given them a lot of. We've just been at them. I bet you if we sit back like you were talking and just said, okay. So what I would love in the little Q&A section, because it looks like that's the part where people are typing, or you can go in the little chat box if that's available to you. Either for everybody watching this live, maybe a takeaway or two, like, hey, as a result of what AJ said there, or Kyle, what you mentioned there, something I'm going to be doing and digging into is the following. Here's an action that I'm taking as a result of something you guys said. Everybody should have one of those. And then also, I bet you, AJ, we could probably get 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 questions off of something we were riffing about. Also, be careful, you have a dog behind you. I don't know how ferocious it is.
She is sleeping back here.
Oh, she's not ferocious.
Yeah, she loves hanging out with me when I'm on my calls.
Cool.
I get so many more questions about her than I do about anything else.
There you go. So give us some takeaways, some actions you're going to take, and then some questions if you could.
Yeah.
And then while we're waiting for those, what else you got for me?
I was just going to wrap that up by saying, when you have some of those things in place, replicating results is the thing that I think people want to jump to the most. They want to be able to replicate or tweak so that they can replicate. Once you have measurable KPIs in place and you are understanding what they mean and how they interact with other things around your organization, you can repeat. You know that if I put in X, I'm going to get out Y. Or if I hire another project manager, they are going to bring in X amount of production. And for me to get that much production, my employees and my office personnel are doing this much volume. Can I tweak how much volume they're doing? Can I change my sales process to interact with that? And one of the things that we did at Cornerstone was we needed more revenue, but we did not want to increase production revenue. So we made some other changes, some other decisions that we made around the organization to protect our culture. We wanted to make sure that we produced, an idea of like a flourishing environment for everyone, which meant that we didn't want to put more pressure on our PMs this year. We're going to help them. We're going to educate them. We're going to get them more training, focus on help building them up, which meant that I can't just pile stuff on them, right? So we looked at different in a different direction on how to increase our revenue this particular calendar year. So
cool.
Replicating results is really important.
Yeah, Tony had a question. I'll let you kind of take it. What are 3 or 4 KPIs that you find are most important as a remote owner?
Where is that?
Tony had asked
man,
that.
Look at all these. Yeah. Okay. So what are the 3 or 4 KPIs that you find most important for AJ as a remote owner? Okay, those are going to be different KPIs for everyone. For me specifically, because of the fact that I have been primarily more involved with marketing and sales over the last couple of years, I primarily pay attention to those KPIs more than I do production. So my KPIs, I have a KPI matrix that I created. Like I said, I kind of nerd out with this stuff. And I have a sheet that helps me track, I think, my gross profit numbers is one. So that is a production related one. But it also informs me how well my estimators are doing. Number 2 is I like to track my conversion percentages for my marketing side. I am looking at leads. I am looking at website traffic, but I know that my money generates leads very consistently or traffic very consistently. So I want to make sure that my leads are coming in. So I think those are probably the 2 most primary ones. I want to get to a couple more questions, but
cool.
Those are going to be different depending on the type of hats that you need to wear around your business. I have really good people in production.
Cool. Lauren said, takeaway, deep diving into our sales process and bandwidth for each employee within that process. We need to focus on timing for design development and give us milestones with set client deadlines to meet in order to keep the wheels turning. Excellent. And the milestone aspect. My clients, they don't want deadlines, and they just drag their feet. So be it. You are leading the process. You are the professional. Explain to them, hey, we have a goal of kind of wrapping this up by this date so that we can get your project ordered and everything so that we can start it around this time. Remind them of that side of things. But that bandwidth for each employee, you're going to start to see, where is my bottleneck? Is it estimating? Is it in the design aspect of it? Is it client selections? And there's all kinds of ways to adjust those. But the fact that that's your takeaway, that's huge. And then imagine when you're able to dial that in better and convert more of those into paying projects, all of a sudden that takes care of some of the other financial things. When we are dragging through design development, and instead of that starting that $100,000 project on May 15th, we're not starting it till July 1st, that has an impact on our ability to bring in the top line revenue, the gross profit, and to lead to the net profit. So that's awesome, Lauren.
Yeah, big time, big time. Dave Thompson, it sounds like a question for the group, but if anybody wants to pipe in here, he says, anyone using Builder Trend reporting with DOMO? I'm not familiar with the acronym, DOMO. Anybody?
I'm not either.
ChatGPT? We use JobTread with my remodeling business, and the reporting mechanisms are pretally good. I know Builder Trend actually has some really good reporting tools there as well. So I don't know if anybody else is using Builder Trend. If you are, Dave, if you want us to connect you with anybody else using Builder Trend to put, some good heads together, happy to do so. I am looking at, okay, yeah, no, it looks like we're getting
reporting system through Builder Trend. Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
Paul wants to get his RENDR account rocking and rolling again. That's cool.
I love that. Yeah. Susanna Codlin. Yeah. Hey, Susanna. I didn't know you were on the call. I missed your name, but it's good to see you. I know JobTread.
She seems to be a fan.
JobTread has a cult following. I'm one of them. They've been great for us. We switched over from CoConstruct when CoConstruct began to be sunset.
I spoke at the JobTread conference, and AJ
had
a booth and I had a booth, but when we never connected until after that.
That was crazy. It was too cold to connect in Dallas, of all places for it to be freezing cold. So yeah, we can connect anybody who's has questions on Builder Trend, and if there's any follow-up questions to be done after this, I'll make sure that I send this recording out to everyone who joined the webinar today. And don't forget, this webinar was fantastic. A lot of great information here. If there are any other webinars here that you guys might find to be valuable, it's going to be the same setting, just different professionals kind of on the call. We're going to get into my next one's Bruce Case from Case Architects and Design. I mean, they are architects and remodelers, I should say. Bruce is phenomenal. They have an amazing design build process that has actually inspired me to change things around at Cornerstone to emulate kind of how they operate. One of the biggest bottlenecks in design build is that pass off between the office and the field, especially as you grow, becomes more cumbersome. So Bruce is going to kind of give some kind of weigh in on some of the processes that they've enhanced in their design build. I think they're a $50 million design build company that operates out of Northern Virginia.
They've probably figured a few things out.
They had to figure a few things out. I think they have 40 some project developers. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think that's also gonna be a good webinar, because hey, what was working with design development may not be working right now, folks. The way that you're structuring how you pay for it, be open to testing and trying new things. The market is different for some of you.
If you were part of my speaking engagement at FAST, you heard me say the 3 steps to process engineering: scrutinize, simplify, streamline. Scrutinize is the most important thing. Even though you think you have something down and you have it right, scrutinize it. Can it be better? You'd be surprised what you find by just allowing yourself to think outside the box sometimes on even things that are running well. Kind of moving forward, Steve Meitinger, this dude is a revenue specialist. He's a sales consultant through Sandler. Amazing brain for sales. We're going to talk sales across the spectrum. I kind of opened it up with him to talk about different types of sales processes that we all can have, whether it's signing or whether it's getting that design agreement signed as a first step, whether it's charging for consultations in general, or I don't charge until a certain piece. Steve's going to weigh in on a lot of the things that we can do to help improve our sales delivery, our sales process, and ultimately we're going to be looking at cycle times too. Logan, a lot of you guys know Logan. He's going to be weighing in on how to maximize, you see what I did there? Maximize your content and your reach on platforms, social platforms, through maximizing even jobs that you've already produced. How can you actually leverage those to, get more leads, get more business coming in? And then Mike Valenti, powerhouse. If you have the same love for processes that I do, you're going to want to be on that one. Mike is over 40 locations now. He's dialed in the system. So we talk about all those little dials. He's dialed this in so well that he can actually open up another location and kind of set it free. He calls it a business in a box. And even though that's not my desire to open up, 15, 20, 40 cornerstone locations across the country, that's what he's doing. And I think there's a lot to be learned with how he's actually orchestrating that type of delivery. So before y'all hop off, there are 2 QR codes on this screen. If you want to connect with either one of us, the QR codes will take you directly to a landing page. Mine is a Calendly link. Schedule some time to catch up. Love to hear your story. Kyle would love to do the same. So if you want to connect with Kyle, if you want some coaching, some mentorship, or at least just to be part of his group, definitely recommend you reach out to Kyle here. If you have questions on RENDR and how we've been able to shorten our sales cycle, go ahead and scan my QR code. I'll tell you all about it. Trust me, I get real excited about that too. But until next time, guys, I appreciate you guys joining the webinar. Hopefully you got something out of it. And I will do some follow-up, send this video out, and I will include some takeaways on the follow-up. So love to see you guys on the next webinar. All right. Thank you, Kyle, for joining.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. Yeah.